I'm Libby, and I'll be reading you today's Cape Cod Times, dated Friday, July 26th, 2024. For the weather outlook today, highs will get up to 80 degrees. We'll have sun giving way to increasing clouds as the day goes on. Tonight will be clear with lows getting down to about 65. Saturday and Sunday look beautiful. Highs will be in the low 80s, and lows will dip down into the mid-60s with plenty of sunshine. By special request from a few of our faithful listeners, we now present the lottery numbers. Thursday's midday drawing of the numbers game. The numbers were 3, 2, 2, and 8. The evening drawing that day, the numbers were 6, 5, 8, and 5. For mass cash drawing on Thursday, we have numbers 4, 9, 10, 13, and 22. The Powerball drawing numbers on Wednesday were 16, 42, 59, 63, 68, and the extra ball of 13. And finally, for the Mega Millions drawing on Tuesday, we have numbers 3, 9, 14, 26, 51, and the extra ball of number 21. The lead story on page 1 of today's newspaper is headlined, Erosion on Cape Cod. Oceanside Eastham Home May Fall Off Eroding Bluff, by Eric Williams of the Cape Cod Times. An oceanfront home with one of the best beach views on Cape Cod is facing an uncertain future because of erosion. According to a release from the Cape Cod National Seashore, the park-owned house at 40 Ocean View Drive in Eastham is no longer inhabitable in its present location. Known as the Bartlett House, the 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home was built in 1960 and sits on a bluff just north of Coast Guard Beach. It was acquired by the National Park Service in 1964 from H. Cragen Bartlett, according to the release. For decades, the house was used by seasonal park employees, and in recent years, was open to the public as a short-term rental. The sand bluff where the home is located has been eroding quickly. According to the park, the house was about 45 feet from the edge in April 2023. It's now less than 13 feet from the edge. Salt water infiltrated the home's well system in the fall of 2023, and the house was deemed no longer usable for residential purposes, according to the Seashore. A cesspool was also removed in the fall of 2023. According to the park, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, determined that the house was unsuitable for habitation on July 9th. That started the clock on a 20-day waiting period to allow for an appeal of this determination, according to the Seashore. Here's what happens next, according to the Seashore release. If there's no appeal, the house will be offered to any interested state or local government entity or homeless service organization. An expression of interest in the property must be filed with HUD. The interested party will need to complete an application packet and ultimately remove the structure. If there is no expression of interest in the home, the National Park Service will continue with the plans to demolish the structure before it is claimed by the sea. Dennis boat crash driver changes plea, sentenced, by Zane Razik of the Cape Cod Times. Dateline Barnstable. A 20-year-old Medfield man accused of operating a boat while impaired during a July 2023 crash in East Dennis that killed his 17-year-old Sherburne girlfriend will serve no jail time after pleading guilty, according to court documents filed at Barnstable Superior Court. David K. Sullivan pleaded guilty on July 15th to boat homicide by negligence and possession of alcohol by someone under 21. A charge of possession of false registry of motor vehicles documents was continued without a finding. Prosecutors dropped 1 count of boat homicide caused by being under the influence of liquor, and 2 counts of operation of a boat while under the influence of liquor causing serious bodily injury. Sullivan drove the boat that crashed into a jetty in Sissuit Harbor around 9 p.m. on July 21, 2023, killing Sadie Morrow, a 17-year-old lacrosse player, and rising senior at Dover Sherburne High School in Dover. At low tide, the bottom of the hull of the boat hit a submerged rock near one of the harbor's entrance and exit jetties, according to David Meyer, Sullivan's attorney. 2 other people on the boat were also injured, according to the district attorney's office. Meyer described the crash as an accident. "We're grateful the district attorney ultimately came to the same conclusion and agreed to reduce the charges to reflect the true facts. Our hope is that the resolution of the case will now allow everyone impacted by the tragedy to move on with their lives," said Meyer by phone. According to Meyer, Sullivan was never asked to perform field sobriety tests, submit to a portable breathalyzer test, or take a blood test. Cape and Islands District Attorney Robert Gallibois' office had requested a suspended sentence of 2.5 years with 5 years of probation. Morrow's family was consulted and supported the recommendation, according to a spokesperson. Judge Michael Callan ultimately placed Sullivan on straight probation for 5 years. Under the special conditions of probation, he will do 500 hours of community service, lose his driver's license for 10 years, and agree to not operate a boat. He must also submit a DNA sample and not consume alcohol and submit to random testing for 1 year. Sullivan must also complete a brain at risk and alcohol education program and continue counseling with a therapist until it is no longer deemed necessary. All 6 people thrown overboard. The boat was identified as a regulator equipped with 2 outboard 250 horsepower engines bearing an Alabama registration, according to a state police statement at the time. All 6 people on board at the time were thrown overboard. Morrow's body was pulled from the water by a regional dive team with assistance from Dennis Fire and Rescue at about 11:30 p.m. during a joint agency search off Cold Storage Beach. Morrow was committed to Gettysburg College in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, to play college lacrosse. When Principal John Smith announced her death in an email to the school community, he remembered her as having a heart of gold and the sweetest spirit. She had such a strong sense of self and had a love for adventure and anything outdoors. A hard-working student and great athlete, Sadie was genuine and effortlessly kind, said Smith. She is remembered by friends and family as a true light who lived every day in full, according to her obituary, and loved family and laughter, friends and sport, animals and the outdoors. She was born with a nature and wisdom beyond her years that allowed her to live a full life that felt far longer than her time here, reads her obituary. Confident, warm, and empathetic in all she did, and to all she met, our lives will be forever brighter and better because of her example. TD Bank closing several branches, by Rin Velasco of the Cape Cod Times. TD Bank will be closing 7 branches they have in Massachusetts, including 2 in Boston. TD Bank will also be closing branches in Belmont, Brewster, Burlington, Lexington, and Pocasset Village in the town of Bourne. The bank regularly evaluates its physical store network and looks for opportunities to better align our network of stores to best serve our customers through an optimal mix of convenient TD Bank locations and digital banking products and services, TD Bank said in a statement. The statement said these branches are set to close on September 20th, 2024. Here are the addresses of the branches that will be closing. Cambridge Street in Boston, Franklin Street in Boston, Trapello Road in Belmont, 2 Barlow's Landing Road in Pocasset, the Route 6A Underpass Road in Brewster, District Ave in Burlington, and Lowell Street in Lexington. According to the TD Bank website, there are 295 TD Bank stores and ATMs in Massachusetts. The bank said that 126 physical store locations will remain after the closures. TD Bank reported a drop-off in deposits in 2023, posting $20.8 billion in deposits in Massachusetts as of June 2023, according to the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, a $1.3 billion drop from the year prior. TD Bank North America is the United States subsidiary of the multinational TD Bank Group, also known as the Toronto Dominion Bank. Israel alleges plot targeting Olympics. Netanyahu to meet with Biden, Harris, and Trump. By John Bacon and Francesca Chambers of USA Today. Israeli authorities have warned French officials of an alleged plot to attack Israeli athletes at the Olympic Games, opening today in Paris amid claims that a ceasefire in Israel's war in Gaza could be near. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz sent a letter to French counterpart Stéphane Séjourne claiming an Iranian-backed plot. Details were not released. It was not clear whether the warning was related to the detention this week of two people accused of plotting terror attacks. The suspects are from the Bordeaux area of southwest France. There are those who seek to undermine the celebratory nature of this joyous event, Katz wrote in a letter translated by the Times of Israel. We currently have assessments regarding the potential threat posed by Iranian terrorist proxies and other terrorist organizations who aim to carry out attacks against members of the Israeli delegation and Israeli tourists during the Olympics. Paris plans to deploy about 35,000 police officers each day for the Olympics, and a peak of 45,000 for the opening ceremony. An additional 10,000 soldiers are taking part in security operations in the Paris region. Meanwhile, negotiations on a ceasefire for hostages deal in the Gaza conflict appear to be in their closing stages, a senior official told reporters Wednesday. President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu were scheduled to discuss remaining gaps at the White House yesterday, the official said during a call about the meeting. Netanyahu was also scheduled to meet with Vice President Kamala Harris, who's expected to replace Biden on the Democratic ticket. Biden has a complicated relationship with Netanyahu, who opposes longtime U.S. efforts to create a Palestinian state. He was openly critical of controversial judicial reforms that Netanyahu's government pushed before Hamas attacked Israel last October. Since then, Biden has been supportive of Israel's right to defend itself, while at times condemning its conduct in the war. Harris has been harsher. She warned Netanyahu in December that civilian casualties in Gaza were unacceptably high. She called for an immediate ceasefire in March. An aide to Harris said ahead of her meeting with Netanyahu that Harris, whose husband is Jewish, has an unwavering commitment to the security of Israel and has been working with Israeli officials as the country fights Hamas. Netanyahu will also meet today with Donald Trump at the 2024 Republican presidential nominee's Florida estate after he leaves Washington, the former president said. Trump is in a close race for the presidency with Harris, polling on the matchup shows. Netanyahu delivered a previously announced address on Wednesday to a joint meeting of Congress. Dozens of Democratic members of Congress boycotted the speech over mounting civilian deaths in Gaza, while protesters clashed with police outside the U.S. Capitol and released maggots inside of a conference room at the Watergate Hotel where the Israeli leader has been staying. Trump, in an interview with Fox News yesterday, criticized the protesters and called for a 1-year jail sentence for those who burned a U.S. flag. The Supreme Court has ruled that flag burning is a form of protected free speech. Harris did not preside over Netanyahu's remarks in her role as president of the Senate. The aide said it was due to her plans to be in Indianapolis at a Zeta Phi Beta sorority event. She's the keynote speaker at the historically African American sororities conference. After their meeting on Thursday, Biden and Netanyahu were scheduled to meet with the families of Americans who are being held hostage by Hamas. Netanyahu met earlier in the week with the families in Washington. So did White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. At the White House, the sitting leaders are expected to discuss the ceasefire and hostage plan that Biden detailed at the end of May, and negotiators have continued to pursue in hopes it will bring about an eventual end to the war. These are difficult, complex issues. There are still gaps to close, but we're making progress. The trend is positive, and I'm determined to get this deal done and bring an end to this war, which should end now, Biden said at a news conference at the end of the NATO summit. The scheduled meetings in Washington came one day after the bodies of 5 Israelis killed on October 7th when Hamas-led militants swept into Israeli border communities were recovered by troops in southern Gaza and brought back to Israel, officials said. The bodies of Ravid Katz, 51, Oren Golden, 33, Maya Gorin, 56, Sergeant Kirill Brodsky, 19, and Staff Sergeant Tomer Yakov Ahimis, age 20, had been taken back into Gaza by militants after the attack. All were previously declared dead by the Israel Defense Forces, though their bodies continued to be held in Gaza. The remains were located in a tunnel in Khan Yunis, authorities said. The first ever Israeli airstrikes on Yemen's port city of Hodeida last week targeted more than Houthi rebels who control the city, the commander of the Israeli Air Force said yesterday. The attack, which killed 6 people and wounded 83 others, came one day after the Iran-backed Houthis' stunning drone attack on Tel Aviv that killed 1 person. Major General Tomer Bar, commander of the Israeli Air Force, said his nation's retaliation was a warning shot for the Houthis, for militant Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon, and for Iran. If a war breaks out in the north, Lebanon, and with Iran, we can handle it, Bar said. 9 months and we are all in, not resting for a moment, realizing the righteousness of the path. GDP grows at a healthy 2.8% rate in the second quarter. Forecasters see Fed rate cut within a couple of months, by Paul Davidson of USA Today. The economy picked up sharply in the second quarter as a rise in consumer and business spending offset a drop in housing construction and a widening trade gap. The nation's gross domestic product, or GDP, the value of all goods and services produced in the U.S., expanded at a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 2.8% in the April to June period, the Commerce Department said Thursday. That's up from a tepid gain of 1.4% early this year and 2.5% increase for all of 2023. Forecasters surveyed by Bloomberg had projected a 1.9% increase. The economy has been surprisingly resilient despite high interest rates and inflation the past 2 years as a result of strong job and wage gains that have provided consumers the wherewithal to keep spending. Many economists are urging the Federal Reserve to cut its key interest rate, now at a 23-year high of about 5.3% to fight inflation, soon. They argue the risk of acting too late and allowing the U.S. to tip into a recession is starting to outweigh the hazards of moving too soon and reigniting inflation, which has fallen to 3% from 9.1% in 2022. Most forecasters expect the Fed to start lowering its benchmark rate in September. The recent loosening of labor market conditions and signs of slower price growth still mean there is a strong case for a cut at the Fed's September meeting. Economist Stephen Brown of Capital Economics wrote in a note to clients. The sturdy 2.8% rise in output in the second quarter could make the central bank think twice about reducing rates in the nearer term. Cracks are beginning to show as high borrowing costs take a bigger toll on both households and companies. Still, in the second quarter, consumer spending increased at a solid 2.3% annualized rate, above the 1.5% pace early this year, but just below the more than 3% clip in the second half of 2023. Consumption makes up about 70% of economic activity. How other parts of the economy performed. Business investment grew 5.2% after rising 4.4% the prior quarter. Outlays for computers, delivery trucks, factory machines, and other equipment surged 11.6%, despite high interest rates that boosted the cost of borrowing. Many companies have purchased labor-saving technology to address labor shortages that continue to plague some industries. Businesses replenished their inventories more briskly after drawing them down the previous quarter, adding nearly a percentage point to growth. Such stockpiling has been volatile and doesn't typically reflect the economy's underlying health. Government outlays rose 3.1%, up from 1.8% the previous quarter. State and local purchases have been juiced by a flurry of infrastructure and clean energy projects, spurred by sweeping federal legislation. Economists still expect a pullback in state and local spending amid a gradually slowing economy that has crimped tax revenue and the depletion of the federal government's pandemic-related aid. Trade was a drag on GDP growth as imports far outpaced exports, Imports leaped 6.9% as Americans continued to snap up foreign-made products. Exports rose just 2% because of economic weakness overseas and a strong dollar that makes U.S. shipments more expensive for overseas buyers. Hurricane season breaks unusual record by Dina Voiles-Pulver of USA Today. The record-breaking Hurricane Beryl in early July overshadowed the opposite conditions in the Pacific Ocean, where island residents have seen lower tropical cyclone activity than normal. Seasonal hurricane outlooks had forecast busier than normal activity in the Atlantic Ocean and a quieter season in the hurricane regions of the Pacific, and so far that's holding true. On July 3rd, for the first time since the satellite era began in 1966, the entire North Pacific saw no named storm activity between June 1st and July 3rd, said Phil Klotzbach, a senior research scientist at Colorado State University. In what might seem like a surprising twist, the same phenomenon, warm water temperatures across much of the North Atlantic, is influencing storm activity in both oceans, Klotzbach said. Scientists compare hurricane season activity through an index known as accumulated cyclone energy. It calculates the total energy of a hurricane season by the frequency of storms and maximum wind speeds of each hurricane over its lifespan. This year, for the first time in recorded history, the Atlantic had generated more energy through July 9th than the entire Pacific, Klotzbach said. What's happening with hurricane seasons in the Pacific? In the far western Pacific, it was one of the slowest starts to tropical cyclone season, said Landon Aidlet, warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service office in Guam. The western North Pacific had only one typhoon in May, and it's only the second time on record since 1950 that the western North Pacific has gone without a named storm from June 1st to July 15th, Klotzbach said. The other year was 1975. In the eastern North Pacific, the birth of tropical storm Aleta on July 4th, nearly 200 miles west of Mexico, was the latest start to the season on record in that hurricane region, beating the previous record set in 1969 by a day, Klotzbach said. Aleta's life as a tropical storm was brief, lasting only a day. This is the first time since 1972 that only one named storm has formed in the eastern North Pacific through July 16th. But activity began to pick up over the weekend with Typhoon Gemi and tropical storm Praparoon. What caused the lack of storm activity in the Pacific? A variety of things contribute to tropical storm formation and frequency in any given season, including natural climate cycles and multi-decade patterns. Several factors are at play in the Pacific this summer, including the lack of a strong monsoon trough in the western North Pacific and too much easterly shear in the eastern North Pacific, Klotzbach said. That's where the warm Atlantic is having an influence. Water temperatures in the tropical Atlantic spiked dramatically from March to June of 2023 and have remained near or at record warm levels since, Klotzbach said. Thanks to global wind patterns, what happens in one location can have a direct effect on what happens in another. The Atlantic and Pacific are influenced by the three phases of the weather phenomenon known as the El Niño Southern Oscillation. They include El Niño, La Niña, and the neutral phase, and the neutral phase. El Niño typically favors more storm activity in the Pacific and less activity in the Atlantic, although the warm temperatures in the Atlantic last summer gained an upper hand, leading to a busier season than expected. Hotter temperatures in the Atlantic also favor a sinking motion over the eastern Pacific, in a La Niña-like circulation that favors upper-level easterly winds in both oceans, Klotzbach said. In the Atlantic, that pattern reduces westerly wind shear, making conditions friendlier for storm formation. In the eastern North Pacific, those easterly winds increase the wind shear affecting tropical storms, preventing them from stacking the high cloud tops that help storms grow more powerful. What about longer-term trends seen in the Pacific? The western North Pacific has seen a 30% decrease in cyclone frequency based on a linear trend analysis between 1990 and 2023, Klotzbach said. Hurricane researchers continue to study the influence of climate change and other factors in tropical cyclones. Some researchers have found human-caused aerosols and air pollution may influence the decline in Pacific cyclones when comparing 1980 through 2000 with 2001 to 2020, said Jeff Masters, a meteorologist and former hurricane hunter and author at Yale Climate Connections. Despite predictions of a more El Niño-like climate because of human-caused climate change, the trend toward a more La Niña-like climate has led to large-scale cooling over the eastern tropical Pacific over 40 years, Masters and his colleague Bob Henson wrote last year. Why is the Atlantic so warm? Scientists attribute the unusually warmer waters in the Atlantic primarily to a weaker than normal subtropical high pressure that led to weaker trade winds, Klotzbach said. Scientists are working to determine what caused that weakness and why it continues to persist. However, Klotzbach said human-caused global warming also plays some role in the warmer water temperatures. Climate change is an actor in the background that has an influence on just about everything, said Brian McNulty, a senior research associate at the University of Miami. I'd be hesitant to blame or not blame climate change for any specific events, he said, because natural variability will be superimposed on that trend. Other recent research indicates tropical activity could continue to decrease across the western Pacific with a warming atmosphere and warming oceans, Aidlet said. That's good news for islanders across the region. The bad news is that storms could be more slow-moving and be filled with a lot more moisture, he said. We're in a changing climate. We have to roll with the punches. U.S. weekly jobless claims fall more than expected by Reuters, Dateline, Washington. The number of Americans filing new applications for unemployment benefits fell more than expected last week as distortions from the weather and temporary automobile plant closures faded. Initial claims for state unemployment benefits dropped 10,000 to a seasonally adjusted 235,000 for the week that ended July 20th, the Labor Department said on Thursday. Economists polled by Reuters had forecast 238,000 claims for the latest week. Claims had increased in the prior week to the upper end of their 194,000 to 245,000 range for this year, lifted by a surge in applications in Texas related to disruptions from Hurricane Beryl. Temporary auto plant closures for retooling also contributed to the rise. Through the volatility, layoffs remain low by historical standards, and the slowdown in the labor market is mostly coming from a reduction in hiring, as the Federal Reserve's aggressive interest rate hikes in 2022 and 2023 cooled demand. The number of people receiving benefits after an initial week of aid, a proxy for hiring, slipped 9,000 to a seasonally adjusted 1.851 million during the week ending July 13th, the claims report showed. We've reached the halfway point of our program today, and regular listeners are aware that at this point in our broadcast, we move to the obituaries. Our first obituary is for Diane E. Caneb, Dateline, Weston. Diane E. Caneb, philanthropist and leader of health care organizations. Diane Caneb, a former board chair of the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary and longtime board member of Partners in Health, and a dedicated supporter of other causes, died on July 15th at her home in Weston. She was 85. The cause was cancer, which was first diagnosed 16 years ago. A determined, engaging, and deeply caring woman whose humble background and religious faith informed her lifelong commitment to serving others, Diane was above all else an optimist who delighted in finding solutions to big challenges. Following her 1961 marriage to Albert Caneb, she spent 25 years raising their 4 children while leading a broad range of community organizations. In a rewarding second act, Diane then went on to work with others to transform two world-leading healthcare organizations. On her own as a board member for 32 years and board chair for 3 years of Mass Eye and Ear, and in partnership with her husband Albert as a board member for 22 years of Boston-based Partners in Health. Their deep engagement with PIH led Diane and Al to further work with other organizations to deliver HIV/AIDS treatment in Rwanda and to provide desperately needed healthcare services in Haiti. Diane Ellen Thorndike was born on April 8, 1939, and grew up in East Bridgewater in a civic-minded Catholic family. Diane, the eldest of 5 children, graduated from East Bridgewater High School, where she was the salutatorian. She attended Smith College on an academic scholarship. During her freshman year, her father died, and to pay for her living expenses, Diane held various jobs on campus, and in the summers worked as a chambermaid and waitress. After graduating cum laude from Smith, Diane was one of the very few women accepted to IBM's executive training program. She and Al wed on May 27, 1961, and her chance for a corporate career ended, but a beautiful partnership and a life that would be full of bigger accomplishments began. In 1989, with her children graduated from college, Diane joined the board of directors of Mass Eye and Ear, bringing a passion and dedication to help improve patient care, expand research, and fuel the infirmary's strategic direction and financial stability. After several years of board service, Diane became convinced that the hospital's leadership was constrained by overly conservative and backward-looking policies that were preventing the hospital from reaching its full potential. She recognized that the best path to genuine change demanded that she run for board chair, thus taking full responsibility for institutional transformation. Diane Canab was already an accomplished and dedicated member of the board when she accepted the position of board chair in 2006, said Joan Miller, MD, chair of ophthalmology at Mass Eye and Ear, and member of the board. Her leadership, vision, and resilience as chair paved the way for Mass Eye and Ear's growth and success over the nearly 2 decades that followed. Diane was an inclusive, generous, and thoughtful leader. She led as she lived, strong in her faith, her family, and her passion for giving. In a 2011 dedication of his book, Haiti After the Earthquake, Dr. Paul Farmer, founder of Partners in Health, praised Diane and Al as 2 friends who, after many years and many challenges, remained still standing with PIH and the people of Haiti. Love is good, but unconditional love is better. PIH dedicated the pediatric wing of their flagship 350-bed hospital in central Haiti to Diane and Al in 2023 in recognition of their transformational support of the organization's programs there. Diane's love for the people and organizations she cared about was truly unconditional, but it was always accompanied by high expectations and clear and firm guidance. Diane also served as chair of the board of hospice at home, board member of Pope John XXIII National Seminary, member of the advisory council of Julie's Family Learning Program, board member of Health Equity International, and vice chair of the board of Bridge Over Troubled Waters. Diane is survived by her husband Al of 63 years, her 4 children, 18 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. She also is survived by her brother Chris, sister Susan, and sister Elizabeth. Diane was predeceased by her sister Joan. In lieu of flowers, contributions to Mass Eye and Ear or Partners in Health would be appreciated. A date for a memorial service has not yet been set. Online guest book at gfdoherty.com. Arrangements by George F. Doherty and Sons Funeral Home in Wellesley. Eugene Jean Francis Tierney. Dateline Worthington. Eugene Jean Francis Tierney, age 93, of Worthington, Ohio, entered eternal peace with God on July 14th at Dublin Methodist Hospital in Dublin, Ohio. Gene is survived by his daughter Allison, grandchildren, and many other family members. Gene was preceded in death by his wife Cynthia, his daughter Gwen, and others. Gene was born in Hartford, Connecticut, where he met his beloved wife Cynthia. They moved to Worthington, where Gene had a long and successful career as an attorney for Nationwide Insurance. Gene also served in the USAF, retiring as a lieutenant colonel in the JAG. Gene loved Cape Cod, where he and Cynthia spent their summers. Gene was an incredibly kind, generous, loving, and active person throughout his life, always seeing the good in everyone. He believed everyone was important and everyone had an interesting life story that was worth getting to know better. He was an inspiration for everyone who knew him, leaving a legacy of love in the lives of everyone he touched. Burial service for Gene will be at noon on July 31st at the Cheshire Hillside Cemetery in Cheshire, Connecticut. A celebration of life service will also be held at All Saints Lutheran Church in Worthington later this fall. Notice will be provided when the service is scheduled. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to the ALS Association in Arlington, Virginia. To view the complete obituary, please go to the website newcomercolumbus.com. Joanne Eaton, Dateline Hyannis. Joanne Eaton, April 19, 1941 to July 22, 2024. The world lost a beloved mother, grandmother, auntie, and friend on July 22nd. Joanne, aka Sido, made her final transition at home, surrounded by family members in comfort and peace. Born in Brockton to the late Joseph and Lillian Mata, Joanne moved to Hyannis in 1968 and remained in the same home until her death. Joanne raised 3 boys and made sure they stayed busy and active. She was a dedicated mother who treasured her children and sacrificed everything to make sure they had a chance to succeed. She especially loved her role as a grandmother and would always oblige when her California grandkids would say, "Talk Boston, Sido." Everyone always knew where they stood with Joanne. She was funny, witty, and full of one-liners. Build a bridge and get over it. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. None ya, which meant stop asking. And most of all, when you got the whatever, it was up to you to either do it or not, with possible consequences to follow. Joanne will be sorely missed by all of those who knew her, and extremely missed by her son Richard and their children, along with her quilting girls, her favorite niece Janet, and the thorn in her side nephew Robert, who watched over her for the past 20 years she lived on her own. She was preceded in death by her lifetime partner Wilton Frady and son Jeffrey. She is survived by family and friends who will continue her legacy and always remember her tenacity, wit, charm, and undeniable love and care for all of them. Joanne will rest in peace at Calvary Catholic Cemetery in Brockton in a private ceremony to honor her wishes. Airline offers options for mobility devices. American Airlines customers will be able to add items to a profile. By Zach Wichter of USA Today. Travelers who rely on mobility devices may find a more streamlined check-in process at American Airlines, as the carrier rolled out automatic device tags across its network. Before, wheelchairs and other mobility aids had to be manually tagged. Now, the airline and its regional partners have activated the capability of printing mobility device tags from kiosks and other systems, just like bag tags. American is committed to improving the travel experience for our customers who use wheelchairs and mobility devices. Julie Rath, American's Senior Vice President of Airports, Reservations, and Service Recovery, said in a statement. According to the airline, the new tags include more specific data about the mobility devices, including full itineraries, delivery points, device weight, battery type, and the number of components a customer removed and brought aboard as carry-on. Checked devices will continue to travel the cargo space with other checked luggage. The new tags will ensure more accurate and consistent information for team members handling devices and provide enhanced visibility of the devices throughout customers' travel journeys, the airline's statement said. According to the Department of Transportation, U.S. airlines typically mishandle about 1.4% of the mobility devices they carry, with 11,527 incidents reported across the industry in 2023. American Airlines and its regional partners were slightly above the industry average, mishandling 1.77% of the devices they brought aboard in 2023. 2,589 incidents reported in total. American said it's working to improve the experience for its customers with disabilities, including by improving training for employees who interact with or handle the equipment of these travelers. This fall, American will start allowing travelers to include information about their device in their online profiles and automatically add that information to any new reservation they make. Today's Ask Carolyn column is headlined, "Did she wear a see-through dress to the wedding out of spite?" Dear Carolyn, we got married overseas and did the legal bit in a courthouse. Since the courthouse was small, we invited only close family and the wedding party, no significant others, who joined us for lunch after. Friends and family were fine with this. However, my now brother-in-law's girlfriend interpreted this as a personal slight. Brother-in-law sent my husband a barrage of texts arguing for her to attend. I met with her to explain the seating. My aunt's husband wasn't even going, and said it wasn't meant as a slight. She made clear she would not forgive me. The courthouse ceremony went well, so imagine my surprise when she wore a transparent mesh dress with a black thong and no bra to our religious wedding. She has no history of wearing revealing clothes. I'm an only child, and this was an important day for my parents. So I am angry that she thought this was the way to voice her frustrations. The wedding was amazing, and we had the best time, but what do we do going forward? My husband and I have always been friendly with her. We've privately not had a high view, since she screams at waiters, is rude to my brother-in-law's friends, I think he's been isolated from them, but never voiced these concerns. I don't even know how to behave around her now. It doesn't help that my husband's family insist this must have been an accident and we are being paranoid. They want my husband to reach out to his brother to hear his side. We think his brother will propose soon, which is his choice, but means even more time with her. I want to let this go. But on top of feeling disrespected by the girlfriend, I now feel betrayed by the family. How do I move forward? Signed, Angry. Dear Angry, you can move forward in one thought if you can agree with one thing. The girlfriend's big mistake wasn't to flip you the bird in a peekaboo dress. Though, wow, talk about showing people who you are. It was taking her courthouse exclusion as a personal insult when it wasn't about her personally. Agree? Then apply it to your outrage right now. You've taken her dress as a personal insult. But if you reread your letter, I hope, you'll see the girlfriend is an angry, insecure, unstable, chaotic emergency of a person, which is no more a personal statement about you than your courthouse rule was about her. How people respond to situations is always about them fundamentally. Meaning, she didn't disrespect you with her clothing. She called attention to herself. You all had a choice whether to grant it. Your husband's family hasn't betrayed you. They're merely as distracted as you are by her show, into believing it deserves a response at all. She warrants attention in one sense, for the entirety of the emotional hot mess. That problem is only worsening for your brother-in-law and his family. You asked about her wedding antics, so I addressed them, but the real headline is the evidence that she's abusive. Join onelove.org/signs unhealthy relationship. That you've witnessed, but not discussed. So, cancel the dress scandal. Politely disengage from the girlfriend. McDonald returns to Provincetown ahead of return to Broadway. by Kathy Scrizzy Driscoll, contributing writer. Actress Audra McDonald is rushing from a car in New York City and climbing 4 flights of stairs to get to a wardrobe fitting for her series The Gilded Age, as she talks about her love of Provincetown and her upcoming August 4th concert here. Filming is about to start on the 3rd season of the just Emmy Award-nominated HBO hit, in which McDonald plays Dorothy Scott, part of a well-to-do Black family who provides rare costume drama representation of what was happening in Black communities during that late 19th century age of excess. After a series of concerts this spring, including through Australia, McDonald is also readying a 14th Broadway show, following up 2022's debut of little-known drama Ohio State Murders, with a recently announced revival of one of the most famous musicals ever, Gypsy. Don't expect previews of key Mama Rose songs in Provincetown, though, she says with a laugh. That waits until the classic, based on stripper Gypsy Rose Lee, and her quintessential stage mother, previews in November. What Provincetown Town Hall audiences can expect is an almost improvisational style with go-with-the-flow energy between 30 years plus friends McDonald and host accompanist Seth Rudetsky. In the signature interview concert style created there by Sirius XM radio host, musician, and writer Rudetsky, he'll typically surprise McDonald with what he says and asks about her life and roles, and often with what he'll ask her to perform. It's a wide repertoire. McDonald's Broadway shows include Ragtime, The Gershwins, Porgy and Bess, and Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill. She holds records for the most Tony Award wins at 6, and is the only female performer to win all 4 play and musical acting categories. She says she and Rudetsky have fun being on stage after growing up together in their careers, and she's always game to visit Provincetown, as she has regularly for producer Mark Cortali's Broadway series since 2013. I love coming to Provincetown. It's a very magical, wonderful, open, beautiful place, sort of a utopia of what could be in the rest of the world, she says. I love being there with the audiences, the people, and it's just one of my favorite places on earth. Audra McDonald's career spans TV and stage. It'll be a quick midsummer visit, though, with her upcoming TV and Broadway work. After Gilded Age, McDonald, age 54, is looking forward to entering a similar vaudeville era as was depicted in her 2016 Broadway show Shuffle Along, or the making of the musical sensation of 1921 and all that followed. With Shuffle Along director George C. Wolfe, McDonald is particularly looking forward to exploring Gypsy's iconic character of Mama Rose, famously played by Ethel Merman, Angela Lansbury, Bernadette Peters, Patti LuPone, and more, from a Black woman's point of view. If you do theater, if you love musical theater, you know that musical and you know that role, she says, noting she's been considering the part for years. You look at that role and imagine it in a world where Rose is a Black woman. To look at this show in a particular way in this era right now, especially where we are with everything going on in the world, it makes sense that the revival is coming about now. It's going to be interesting to hear lines like, "I was born too soon and I got started too late," coming from a Black woman. And re-teaming with Wolfe, whose 2024 Lifetime Achievement Tony celebrated a career ranging from Angels in America to Bringin' Da Noise, Bringin' Da Funk to Take Me Out, anybody who gets to work with him comes back completely changed. You become deeper, and you aspire to become a more intelligent, and I think, fearless performer when you have someone like George guiding you. I just wanted to experience this role and this journey with George. McDonald also worked with Wolfe for his 2023 film Rustin, briefly playing civil rights leader Ella Baker in that story of Bayard Rustin, a civil rights leader key to making the 1963 March on Washington happen, but largely unacknowledged because he was gay. Another small but vital McDonald 2023 film role was portraying Miss Hale, who, in Ava DuVernay's Origin, shares her story with author Isabel Wilkerson, Ijune Ellis Taylor, as she researches groundbreaking book Caste. Laughing as she tries to get the famous "there are no small parts" quote right, the actress says she jumped at chances to be in both films. Honestly, if they'd asked me to just come down and hold a microphone, I would have done that too, McDonald says. Both of these projects felt like very important pieces that, especially as a Black woman, I just wanted to be part of. How to see Audra McDonald in Provincetown. Broadway's Audra McDonald with host and accompanist Seth Radusky, 8:30 p.m. on Sunday, August 4th at the Provincetown Town Hall on Commercial Street. Tickets are $75 to $200 plus service fees, and reservations and information can be found at ptowntownhall.com. We're not a New York bagel. Cape Cod Shop's bake is softer and fluffier. By Gwen Friss of the Cape Cod Times. Michael Davis was at sea, a merchant marine keeping his ship fed with a crew of 24, when a real estate friend suggested he buy a bagel shop in Yarmouth. That was in 2018, and the Mashpee resident now has both feet firmly on land as the owner of the original Bagels and Beyond on Route 28 in Yarmouth, and Bagels and Beyond 2, which opened last November in a spot that formerly housed Rendezvous Cafe and Creperie on Main Street in Hyannis. The bagel and sandwich shop opens into Puritan, Cape Cod. With July 26th being National Bagel Fest Day, one of two national days dedicated to bagels, National Bagel Day is January 15th, Davis said, "Any day we can celebrate what we do, we'll do it. We'll take Bagel Day, Bagel Fest Day, National Cream Cheese Day, and maybe, if they have it, National Schmear Day." We couldn't find a day dedicated to cream cheese or a schmear, from the Yiddish word meaning to spread, of cream cheese, but we did learn Davis's secret to the 32,000 or so bagels his two stores produce each week. "The biggest distinction of our bagels," Davis said, "is that we're not a New York bagel. If you're looking for a hard shell with a heavier, dense bagel, that's not us. We're a lot lighter and a lot softer, but it still crisps up in the toaster." The Culinary Institute of America graduate explained that traditional New York bagels are made by boiling, then baking the dough. Bagels and Beyond uses an alternate method, he said, which skips boiling and involves injecting steam into the proofer while bagels are rising, and again into the oven while they are baking. The result? A lighter, fluffier bagel with more rise. It seems to be working for Bagels and Beyond, which won National Bagel of the Year in 2022 at the Artisan Bakery Expo East for a French toast bagel made with a mix of cinnamon, vanilla, and dehydrated maple bits for pops of flavor, Davis said. While most of the 22 bagel flavors are traditional and savory, Bagels and Beyond offers a seasonal variety in both of its stores that allows us to have a little more fun, Davis said. Right now, the seasonal choice is a Fruity Pebbles bagel with the cereal in the batter and baked on top of the bagel. It pairs well with strawberry or honey vanilla cream cheese, both from the seasonal menu, Davis said. They sometimes have Nutella cream cheese, so it's worth asking. Off-season specialties in bagel flavors have included 7-spice hot pepper, as well as olive and Parmesan cheese. Bagels are $1.40 each or sold in a baker's dozen of 13 for $15.25. The Beyond portion of Bagels and Beyond includes breakfast burritos, salad, and hot and cold sandwiches. Why National Bagel and Bagel Fest Days? If you're curious about how National Bagel Day and National Bagel Fest Day differ, the answer is not much. Both are for eating and enjoying bagels and their toppings. Bagel Fest was created by baker Murray Lender, the owner of Lender's Bagels, who is credited with selling the first pre-sliced bagels as a tribute to the baked goods history and flavors. And if anyone is planning to pursue a National Schmear Day, the folks at Bagels and Beyond may be able to offer expert advice. Davis said each store goes through at least 400 to 500 pounds of cream cheese each week. That's a whole lot of schmearing going on. Cultural Center of Cape Cod brings alive Wonderful Wizard of Oz by Gwen Friss of the Cape Cod Times. I grew up in the years when The Wizard of Oz was shown on TV once a year, and the whole family would gather to watch, even those of us who were afraid of the flying monkeys. In a different twist on a classic, families are invited to take a hands-on approach to The Wizard of Oz with a day of free activities from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., July 27th at the Cultural Center of Cape Cod on Old Main Street in South Yarmouth. Build Lego creations in the No Place Like Home room, or test your skills at the If I Only Had a Brain teasers. Enjoy fun outdoor games like Condiment Twister and cool off in the Somewhere Over the Rainbow sprinkler, reads a statement about the Family Fun Day. Kicking off the night before and continuing through September 7th will be the Wonderful Wizard of Oz exhibition featuring the Dorothy paintings by artist Christina Schlesinger. Schlesinger's mural-sized paintings in various media employ different textures and colors to portray a balance of Dorothy's independence and resilience, as well as her youthful vulnerability in a new way. Through my paintings, I wanted to capture Dorothy's journey as a powerful metaphor for the challenges and triumphs young girls face in discovering their own strengths, Schlesinger said in the written statement about the exhibition. In Over the Rainbow and Home Again, a 3 p.m. concert on Sunday, July 28th, renowned jazz pianist Laszlo Gardoni will premiere his arrangement of Somewhere Over the Rainbow and other pieces from the 1939 movie. Concert tickets are $25 and are available at the Cultural Center's website. Today and tomorrow, Palette, the Cultural Center's supper club, will serve a Wizard of Oz themed meal, including tiger mushroom tart with bechamel sauce, followed by lion's mane mushroom steak with polenta and fried Brussels sprouts, and finished with poppy seed cake with bearberry sauce, according to the website. Tonight's is sold out, but spaces remain for tomorrow at $60 per person. Molly de Moulinaire, the Cultural Center's executive director, said in the center's statement, Dorothy's journey, alongside her wonderfully loyal and caring friends, mirrors the universal quest for belonging and self-discovery, making it a story that truly resonates across generations. It's also a journey that swept up de Moulinaire and Jenna Clement, the Cultural Center's arts educator, in residence, prompting them to turn the center's vault into a tornado. All of the other galleries had something connecting them to the Wizard of Oz. So we've actually made a tornado installation. We've created an 8-foot high by 4 foot in circumference wire sculpture that is a public art installation, de Moulinaire said. And that's all I have time for today. This is your reader Libby saying thank you for listening.